Bruxelles, je t'aime. Tu m'as fait manquer. Bruxelles, je t'aime. Bruxelles, je t'aime. T'es ma préférée. Bruxelles, je t'aime. Bruxelles, je t'aime.
Hello and welcome to Brussels, my love, our weekly talk show from the heart of Europe. Here we discuss what moves Europe, for better or for worse. I'm Stefan Grubbe, great to have you with us. Coming up this week, with more than a dozen heads of state and government in the Council, the largest group in Parliament, and one of their own at the helm of the EU Commission, the European People's Party is the biggest force in the political arena. This week, the continent's Christian Democrats and centrists came together in Valencia to showcase power and principles. Yet, they still need governing partners to their left or to their right. Is that a problem? And one man who knows a thing or two about that dilemma is Friedrich Merz, the next Chancellor of Germany. In Berlin, he just forged a coalition with the Social Democrats and engineered new massive spending power for Germany that even had the backing of the Greens. Not everyone in his party liked that. Now he wants to be more assertive in Brussels and stand up to Donald Trump. Is that good for Europe? Questions for our guests today, namely Richard Schenk, Research Fellow at the Hungarian think tank MCC Brussels, Lena Schilling, Austrian member of the European Parliament from the Greens, and Gerben-Jan Gerbrandy, Dutch member of the European Parliament from the Liberal Renew Group. Thanks again for coming on the show. Great to have you here. Now, before we get the conversation going, let's take a closer look at the leading political family in Europe.
The European People's Party came in first in last year's European elections. Gathered in Valencia this week, the EPP celebrated its newfound strength following most recent election victories, notably in Germany. With Ursula von der Leyen at the helm of the EU Commission, and with the EPP being the largest group in the Parliament and dominant force in the Council, the party wields enormous power across Europe. Enter Donald Trump. The US president is trying to attack the multilateral world order and weaken the European Union using his allies, such as Viktor Orban and Giorgia Meloni. And the EPP? The firewall between mainstream conservatives and the far right, once firm, is eroding. Will the EPP defend the principles of the European founders, or will it cave to right-wing populism?
Let's talk about that firewall that is eroding. Richard, I want to start with you. In Germany and Austria, the EPP eventually formed coalitions with somebody else.
During the last years, we have seen across Europe that the EPP was very keen on getting into power because 5 years ago, if you look into this, Social Democrats had the upper hand. And the EPP discovered, okay, oh my gosh, we are losing power. So what they did, that they prop up their numbers across Europe with far-right votes. But more recent development, this began since 1 or 2 years, is that the far-right parties of several kinds have realized that the EPP is just using them to prop up their numbers, and they are not getting anything in return. So they've grown more skeptical of the EPP itself, and we have seen this in Austria most prominently, where the FPÖ was not, the Freedom Party was not agreeing to the terms that the Austrian People's Party has proposed to them.
Yeah. Lena, obviously Austria is mentioned. What is your take? The irony is that the far right is booted out of potential power, yet they're gaining ground in polls. So what's the situation in Austria?
What we are seeing and what we were experiencing during the question of how will the next government look in Austria, we saw that the far right did just not manage to find a compromise. They are not willing to work for any kind of stability or take responsibility. And I think that's just a matter of fact. We are seeing all the time they are not showing up in negotiations. We are seeing they are not taking part in this democratic process. And that's what they are. in Austria and also in many other countries, the far-right parties are anti-democratic and working like that. And the EPP has now to take a decision. They can lean towards a democratic majority and work with the progressive forces here in the parliament, but also, of course, across Europe as the head of the states, or they will fail and fall again for the false promises of the far-right, as they did in Austria sometimes, and it never ended good.
Jan, in the Netherlands, we have an interesting coalition government. Tell us about your experience there.
The original EPP party in the Netherlands is not part of the current government. The current government does work together with extreme right, the party of Geert Wilders. And it's absolutely clear what that means. It means that you're eroding democracy, you're eroding the level of human rights in your own country. And they simply don't have the skills to govern. So we do have a government, but nothing really happens. And what is happening is certainly not future-oriented and beneficial for our own country.
All right, let's head over to Valencia, to our own Maeve McMahon, who has been following the proceedings very closely for us, and she has more.
Well, Stefan, it's been a rather strange, surreal week here in Spain, given the power cut that occurred on Monday at 12:33. But the European People's Congress was able to take place, albeit with a few less participants. And the big headline here was the fact that the German politician Manfred Weber has been given the green light to preside over the party for the next 3 years. Euronews' Shandor Zira sat down with Manfred Weber on the sidelines of this Congress and asked him what he believed were the biggest threats facing the European Union today.
The main competitor for us for the next years are the populists and the extremists. We are facing an authoritarian wave all over the world, and it is also coming and arriving in Europe. So we are ready to include the serious conservative parties in Europe. For example, Giorgia Meloni showed in Italy, together with Antonio Tajani, that they are credible, that they are center-based. That's why I work together with the serious ones, but with those who are really taking Europe into question, like Biden and AfD or Le Pen, is no cooperation possible at all.
That authoritarian wave that he is describing, would you call it the same way? Is that the word you were using, authoritarian? And then he makes an interesting selection of right-wing figures with whom he can work and with whom he cannot work. Is that a reasonable point of view from a political standpoint?
Well, if he just distinguish between a garnish, what Manfred Weber has presented, his core observations was actually that he wants to have in some countries he's working with other people and in not, and the distinguishment was much more according to how opportunistic this behavior would benefit the EPP party there. And so we see that the EPP is a formidable governing machine. This is the core identity of the EPP. It's not some certain policies or traditions. The EPP is meant to be in government, and all its member parties are government machines. It's all very technocratic in its nature. So this is the very essence of the EPP, and this works. This smoothness that the EPP is displaying works in keeps them in government. But whenever they are in government, they have problems in actually implementing policies and bringing the countries forward. And this is the problem with the new EPP compared to 50 years ago, where the EPP was very much a party, for example, of market economy or defense against the Soviet threat. So the EPP has lost its purpose. It's hollowed out.
That's interesting. I like that description as a power machine without principles. Lena, do you agree?
Maybe starting with Manfred Weber celebrated his re-election with a speech attacking everybody, every party except the far right. And that's also kind of a sign. That's the first thing. The second thing is the conservatives in Austria, but also in many other member states, are longer in power than I'm alive. And right now we're seeing a back and forth that is just crazy to see, because the conservatives telling we are a European party, we want stability, are doing the exact opposite. And I mean, now this Congress is taking place in Valencia, where we have seen incredibly dangerous floods 6 months ago.
I just want to cut you off here, but we have we'll talk about this in particular later. Gerben-Jan, in this interview that we just we saw a part of it, Weber also says the 19.7% the EPP got last year in the European elections gives them a mandate for a center-right driven agenda. Can he make that claim? And what does that agenda look like?
Well, of course, but he's not doing so because what he's saying that his biggest political rivals are the extreme parties, but he works together with them. He works together with the party of Le Pen. He works together with the party of Geert Wilders. He even works together with the AfD because they form majorities in parliament that are right-wing majorities. What he's basically doing, because the EPP is the biggest party, but they only have 26%. They have no majority themselves. So they need coalitions in order to reach their political objectives. Well, looking for the right-wing majority, he's basically giving the key of our parliament to people like Le Pen, Wilders and Orban. And I think that's a very, very dangerous development. If you look at what the real European agenda is, that is our defense, but also our green objectives, reviving our economy. They all need the center coalition. EPP, as in the Liberals, and as far as I'm concerned, are the Greens part of that as well. But he's alienating himself and the EPP from the center coalition by constantly working together with those parties that he calls his biggest enemies.
Yeah. Lena, you're nodding.
That is quite typical. In my country, that's seen as very typical Christian Democrat behavior.
Yeah.
Say one thing and do something else.
You don't mean this in a positive way.
No, not really.
Lena?
We know that from Austria quite well, but also now when we're working in the committees, we're experiencing it often that there are compromises. We try to work constructively because that's the thought of a European Union, that we work together, that we find the best compromise. And right now the Conservatives are just not doing this, following the path, and sometimes just in the last moment overthrowing a good compromise, a compromise that would really hold something, and just go to the far right and do something, and then we have nothing. There were many different negotiations where that happened in different committees.
Richard, now we're talking about policies here. What would be a textbook Christian democratic policy for Europe, in Europe?
One of the core promises that Christian Democrats and the European People's Party always made to the voters is that you will have a better future than your previous generations, and it was mostly in economic terms. This was their promise. The economic miracle in post-war Germany and also across all Western Europe was very much accredited with figures like Ludwig Erhard, the German Chancellor from the CDU, and whenever they managed to do so, whenever they provided safe jobs in industry, rural areas, for farming communities, then the EPP was doing very well. And they are struggling to repeat this success formula nowadays in this recent environment. And one of the reasons for them is actually that because they have created this firewall to the right, but also they are now in a kind of Babylonian captivity with the center left. They are very, very struggling to develop their own stance, and also what Lena has described, this volatility in their positions is very much the result of this hollowing out of their very own stances, because they don't even know what they want before they go into negotiations.
All right, let's go back to Valencia again to Maeve McMahon, who has more for us.
Well, another big headline, Stefan, if you like, from the EPP Congress here in Valencia is that the Catalan MEP, Dolors Montserrat, has been elected as the Secretary-General of the party. I had the opportunity to ask her here how she will unite a traditionally divided party and what line she will take.
From EPP, we want to continue to lead in Europe our policies. Now we have 15 commissioners in the Council. We have 13 countries under the governments of EPP. So this what means that the European citizens are looking our party. Why? Because we are giving solutions to their problems. We are not populists. We are not extremists. We are from the central, the ones that we are never dividing the societies, and we are giving finding solutions to the real problems.
Yeah, Gerben Jan.
Yeah, it's funny because when you listen to Manfred Weber's speech and Dolores' statement here, it looks like power itself is the objective and not the policies that you want to obtain by using your power. And I'm totally different. I have a totally different position in politics. I want to achieve certain things. I want to renew our economy. I want to make it greener. I want to make it more social. And yes, do I need power for that? Yes, absolutely. But to obtain those objectives, and the power machine of the EPP, their main objective is to get power and stay in power. And I think that is very weak.
This claim of leading Europe with solutions, common sense solutions, what do you make of this?
If you want to lead, you have to take responsibility. And that's what the Conservatives are right now not doing. You have to be stable, but you also have to be a responsible partner for the other ones, trying to work for those policies. And if we talk about these policies, yes, we need to talk about defense. Nothing heard of that here. We need to talk about how we connect the social question, the climate question, the question of defense, and the transition of the European economy is nothing that will happen with back and forth and something and just searching for power, instead of being a responsible politician where citizens can watch and see, I can trust if you make a law, it will hold more than 5 years. That would be nice. And then we can also implement them. And the EPP is not doing it.
On this?
On this, well, how can the EPP lead? Well, the EPP never was the political force that was doing some kind of transformation of society. It was never a revolutionary movement of any sort. This is, I think, very obvious. So they need to go back because, I mean, if they do compromises with the Greens on this, like climate transformation, which is very much connected to a social transformation, then the EPP is actually losing its very core, because it's promised people, we are modernizing society so that you can live as you want to, or as you used to. You can change according to your wishes, but we don't want to transform how you live. We want to give you more means how you live, but we don't want to unroot you from your core values. And this is one of the big problems with these compromises with the center left that the EPP constantly has, because it doesn't share this transformationary core that these parties have.
Well, the
I
point
strongly
is
disagree.
they don't have the power.
No, but I think their problem is completely different. They are in essence, they are conservatives. And in the current world, we are in so many transitions at the moment. The world is changing so rapidly. And we've seen it on the ground in the past. We now see it in geopolitical terms as well. This is not the right moment for conservatives, because they are against change. That's why I'm a liberal, and that's why I also like to work together with the Greens and also some of the Social Democrats. They're future-oriented. They want to change the world according to what is needed. And conservatives, like the EPP, they basically promise the past to their voters, and the past will never return.
But the voters
we have to change together with...
Elena, on this.
I think there is a point, especially when we look in making policies for the past and wanting to lead, speaking about competitiveness. To be competitive, we need to improve ourselves. We need to improve our industry. We need to transform in some sectors, like in the car industry. In a time where every fourth car is electric, and we see also the car industry adapting, and then always the backtracking on these topics, there we will lose to China. We kind of lost to China, but there are things we can do to change that. And yes, we need to be brave politicians, and that's one of the things many, I think especially young people, are frustrated about. Right now in Vienna we had elections, and with the polls under 30, the people under 30 years old, the Conservatives would not be in the parliament anymore, in the Viennese parliament. So what we are seeing is we are disappointed by them not taking brave actions and doing what is necessary. It's not about doing a revolution. It's about taking the steps that we need to adapt to the world we are living in. Looking into the US, looking into China, we need to step our game up. Europe has to improve, Europe has to step up and to be brave at this point, more than ever.
Well, it was until 2 years ago or something, a Christian democratic policy in Europe under Ursula von der Leyen to bring about the Green Deal. And today they're backpedaling. Is this a concession to the far right? Have they realized that it's not workable? What is the Christian democratic core in this position?
So to ground against this discussion, because what you have described is very nice. It makes sense from your own party's logic, but it's not what people are voting for across Europe. You are with these positions, both of your party families have lost the elections. And you have to realize that people are upset about these current policies that are unrolled them top down across Europe, and most prominent is the Green Deal, obviously, that has a very top-down approach.
I brought it up.
Yeah, exactly. So if this Green Deal means that currently industry jobs across Europe are going abroad and are destroyed, and this is a catastrophic, not only for the working class itself, but also if you look into geography for rural communities, for example, and people are upset about this, and they search for parties for at least something, and do not describe this as some past that we need to leave behind. They are searching with the EPP, with the far right, with somebody.
But this assumption is totally wrong, because the economic problems that we're faced with have nothing to do with the Green Deal, which, by the way, was Ursula von der Leyen's project, her man on the moon project. And last time I checked, she is part of the EPP family. No, the main problem for our industry are the high energy prices, and those are all. And those are no, not at all. They're completely linked to the Ukraine war. We had to get rid of Russian gas and oil within a year. No, not at all. So the most stupid thing we can do is to slow down on the Green Deal.
Okay, thank you so much for this first round, and thanks to our panel for their insights. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, Friedrich Merz's first foray onto the European stage. Stay with us. Welcome back to Brussels, my love. Our guests are still Lena Schilling, Gerben-Jan Gerbrandy and Richard Schenk. In a few days, Christian Democrat Friedrich Merz will become the 10th Chancellor of the Federal Republic of Germany. After a snap election in February, his party became the strongest political force again, ahead of the far-right AfD party. Mathematically, the electoral outcome left Merz with two options, a coalition with the AfD or with the Social Democrats. As he had excluded any form of cooperation with the far right, he teamed up with the party of outgoing Chancellor Olaf Scholz. Friedrich Merz was in Valencia this week at the EPP Congress. Let's hear how he's getting on by getting an update from Maeve McMahon.
Well, Stefan, a major highlight for EPP delegates here is the fact that Friedrich Merz is on the cusp of becoming the next Chancellor of Germany. He gave a speech yesterday to a packed room in flawless English. Take a listen to what he had to say.
Many of you expect more German leadership than we have seen in the last years. I'm decided to take more initiatives, to take more time on international affairs and especially on European affairs together with you.
Merz has already indicated, even prior to Valencia, over the past weeks, that he's determined to play a much more forceful role in Europe. How should the rest of the EU feel about that, Richard?
Merz's outward turn towards Europe and the world stage has it's the complete opposite of how his situation is at home. He has a wafer-thin majority, 12 votes in the parliament. Only 9,000 votes separated him at the ballot box from the minority. So his domestic situation is precarious. In order to get the majority together with the Social Democrats, he had to jettison most of his economic policies overboard. We spoke about this in the previous block. And what he managed to secure is a combination of European and foreign affairs for his own party, and also a good portfolio regarding migration. So as a European, you can expect for Merz's government that these are the two policy areas where he will be very active in the upcoming
Do you
time.
agree with this? I mean, after all, he's now in a coalition with the outgoing party, and 1/3 or so of cabinet positions are occupied by Social Democrats, sometimes the same people who have been in government before. How can he bring about change with such a constellation, Lena?
I think one of the main problems here is, again, Friedrich Merz is full of contradictions. We have seen it with how he dealt with migration during the electoral campaign, where he, as a former European parliamentarian, he knows what European laws mean, and just telling let's break them for a good electoral result is not responsible. He's saying he wants to team up and make like good work here in the European Union, and at the same time we are seeing him breaking promises and doing this or that. We saw that he said we need to cut the budget, and as soon as he's in the government, I find
Not
that
even
good.
yet, but
Not
yeah.
even yet, but he's planning to overthrow it and invest. That's a good thing, but he's doing this back and forth. He's talking about a lot about defense and security, and at the same time he's not willing to phase out oil and gas consequently, so we will keep our economic dependency on Russian gas.
Yeah.
He's even saying wind turbines are ugly, that's why we should just put them away when we are ready, which is completely insane in my opinion.
Will he be that power player in Brussels that many people expect him to be?
Well, I do hope so. And simply because of the fact that we need much more and a stronger Europe, more unified Europe. And in the past, that only worked out with a strong Germany and a strong France. I think nowadays a strong Poland is very crucial there as well. And I am hopeful. I was relieved by the result of the German elections, but that had more to do with the failure of AfD to become the biggest party than the win of CDU. But I do believe that we can benefit from a stronger role from Germany, but the agenda should be very clear. It should not be a German agenda, it should be a European agenda. And I hope that Friedrich Merz is going to talk a lot with Ursula von der Leyen, because her position is very European, very future-oriented, fast track, because we need to change very quickly. And I hope he's going to follow that line.
He's been speaking with her quite often, also with Emmanuel Macron. And this is, I think, a change compared to Olaf Scholz and Macron, who didn't really find common ground, and there was no personal chemistry. This doesn't seem to be the case here. Macron and Merz seem to be getting on very well, and they have the same political vision. Is that true? Is that hopeful? Is that a good thing for Europe?
I can't comment on the personal chemistry between both, because who can guess that from the outside? More important is that both are in a very similar domestic situation. As I explained, Merz is already facing precarious situation in Germany. Emmanuel Macron is a lame duck in France currently, and he's hoping to boost up his polling numbers through his focus on foreign policy. It worked a bit, but not much so far. So he's still in a bad position, domestic, and this unites them. This makes them political allies, but this doesn't make them leaders of a strong France or a strong Germany. A strong Germany for Europe would be a Germany that is not in the third year of its stagnation. The German economy is at the core of European economic problems currently, and if Merz would be a real pro-European, he would fix his domestic economic problems so that we could then transition this German economic success into a European one. That would be a real contribution to the European issue.
Lena, does he have to be successful to sideline the far right in Germany, obviously?
What he has to do is show, and there I agree that he's a true European. What he needs to do now is show that he is thinking about policies that are helping our European Union as one unity. Right now, we are watching the geopolitical situation where there is much tension, where there is so many conflicts. And what we would need is a strong leader for Germany who is also willing to lead a bit in Europe, but doing that and focusing and thinking about how the European Union needs to improve in economic issues. there we, of course, disagree, but also on the transformation side.
That is a good conclusion for this round. As always, check out the latest on Friedrich Merz in our programs on our various platforms. For now, many thanks to our guests and to our viewers. See you soon here on Euronews. Welcome to Brussels, my love. I'm Stefan Grobe, and I'm here with my guests Gerben-Jan Gerbrandy, member of the European Parliament from Renew Europe, Richard Schenk from the think tank MCC Brussels, and Lena Schilling, member of the European Parliament from the Greens. The EPP's big moment in the Valencia sun was somewhat overshadowed by huge public protests. A deliberate reminder of the Conservative regional government's botched handling of October's catastrophic floods. The accusation? The administration failed to give the population adequate warning of the impending disaster. Not the best proof of political competence for the Spanish EPP branch, the Partido Popular. In order to avoid a major embarrassment, the organizers almost moved the party congress to Madrid. So, letting Valencia host the EPP Congress, what is a wise thing to do in retrospect? Gerben-Jan.
Well, I don't know, but I was really appalled by parts of the speech by Manfred Weber, where he talked about climate change, and he said the ideologically driven climate change agenda of Timmermans. He forgot that it's the von der Leyen agenda. But saying that in Valencia, where just a few months ago, more than 220 people died because of climate change, I think that is really scandalous. And someone like Manfred Weber, he should really take back these kind of words. The big danger that we're facing in the world are climate change and loss of biodiversity. Those are the biggest threats behind the smaller threats that are that we're confronted with. And I really find it unbelievable that he said this in the city of Valencia.
Yeah, Richard, do you agree?
The most upsetting moment for me was a different one. It was Ursula von der Leyen, because she refused to meet with the flood victims in Valencia, who demanded a meeting with her before the conference. And now, instead of meeting on a level playing field with the flood victims in their hometown, where Ursula von der Leyen is a guest, she's dragging them to Brussels some months later to just purely because of political party reasons. And I think this is unacceptable. This should not be normality in Europe. And she should have taken the half an hour, more wouldn't have been needed to meet these people, at least give them the sense that they are seen and that we know your problems. This was, I think, unacceptable. And this whole mismanagement in the region, this is a very politicized thing.
So the EPP Congress coincided with the massive power outage in Spain and Portugal this week, and with massive new protests against the regional EPP government's handling of the catastrophic floods 6 months ago. Many people believe their authorities failed them big time, and they decry the damage repair following the disaster has been painfully slow. We spoke to some of the residents in Valencia during the protest. Take a listen.
This march is another enormous cry for justice for all our victims. We, the social society in Valencia, have acted more responsibly than our president.
It seems to be a mockery that just 6 months later, and at the same time we were practically drowning to death, the European People's Party is holding a congress, and they're having a party celebrating the negligence of the Valencian People's Party, specifically the regional government. And with this president who is waiting for his mandate to end so that he can get his lifelong salary for the death of hundreds of people and thousands of victims.
Lena, what do you make of this? We need to say that the regional government and the national government are kind of putting the blame on each other here. But from what we've heard right there, the locals want action and they want accountability from their regional government. Now, I want to rephrase my first question. You have all these EPP grandees coming to Valencia celebrating their political competence in an area where their local branch has shown the exact opposite. So what is that for political optics?
First, honestly, it makes me really emotional to see how these people there were suffering under this flood. And I think it would be the perfect time to recognize what climate change is doing to people already right now. We talk about it's a 1 in 1,000 years disaster, and it will be there every few years because the climate crisis is already here. And now you have the EPP taking their Congress there at a venue that was a morgue where dead people were. And that makes me almost speechless, because then you really need to show responsibility. Then you need to step up and say, yes, we will change our policies also on the local and regional side, but of course also on the European side. We will tackle the climate crisis. We will do everything that not more mothers are losing their children and not more children are losing their parents or people or grandparents. And I think that's really almost a mockery to do it in this venue 6 months after this disaster, and still Manfred Weber is standing there and not recognizing how fatal it is what he's doing for the next generations, but also for the people living here right now. Europe is the continent that will warm the most, and we will need action.
Okay, Gerben-Jan, what do you make of Richard's assertion about Ursula von der Leyen that, you know, this is kind of a political stunt rather than the willingness to show empathy and political support?
I don't think so. I assume that Valencia was already planned before the flooding, so they basically were not able to change it anymore. But I don't think it's a very good choice going there. But what I dislike more is the way that the Partido Popular and also the EPP here in Brussels were trying to move the blame from their own regional president to the socialist, the social democrat government.
What about this Ursula von der Leyen reaction here? Political stunt or not?
I really don't know. I really don't know. I haven't heard it before. I guess in her agenda, it maybe was impossible to drop by. I really don't know. I would have advised her to go to the victims. Absolutely, that is the best to do.
All right. Thank you so much. I think on that point we can close this conversation. Thanks to our panel. Thanks to our viewers. If you want to reach out, please send us an email to brusselsmylove@euronews.com, or you can catch us on social media. That's it for this edition. I'm Stefan Grobe. Have an excellent week. See you soon here on Euronews.